I am so happy and excited to introduce sisters Caitlyn Derosier and Megan Mcbride, and they are the authors of the book Wonderfully Made. And it's a picture book that they're going to be telling you more about in just a couple minutes. And Caitlyn's a school psychologist right here in West Hartford at Webster Hills School. And she's done that work in Naugatuck and New Haven. She lives here in Connecticut with her husband and their 2.5-year-old daughter. And Megan is a special education teacher in New Jersey, and she's got a certification for working with kids in a special way called Orton Gillingham. And they're both originally from Waterford, Connecticut. So welcome to you both.
A huge part of this was just wanting to tell our story. Growing up, Caitlin and I never saw books and literature that had people who look like us, right? Our families were never represented in children's books. We didn't see them in movies. And we felt it was so important to add some diversity, into literature and media. And so this was our way to do it, to tell our story of being biracial.
I think we have two different memories of that. Um, Hers is probably more detailed, but mine was just calling her up and be like, "Do you want to write a book?" And she's like, "Oh, what? Like what? About what?" And I'm like, "I don't know. We can write a book about so many things. Like we could write a book about being biracial. Who's done that? Let's do that." But I know Megan has a little bit more perspective on what she thought of that.
I mean, I would pretty much say that was the story, right? She just called me and was like, let's write a book. And truthfully, I thought she was kidding. And it's just something that they say and whatever, you move on. And then it all came to life very quickly.
So Megan lives in New Jersey and I live here. And so it was kind of like me calling Megan a lot or texting her a lot. Like, what do you think about this? I was reading this. Did you see this? This is how we should start. This is what we should do. And just kind of texting and calling each other back and forth. And just kind of like having like a shared Google Doc where we just throw our ideas out there. One of the biggest things I remember learning was just just start writing. Just whatever ideas you have, don't get caught up in spelling and grammar, any of that. Just put your thoughts out on paper. So we kind of started there, and then it was really fun. I was like, okay, we're gonna plan a weekend. You're coming over, and we're gonna just write our story of growing up being biracial from our own perspective. So we literally sat on my couch, each with our own laptops, and we just sat in silence and just wrote. And I said to her, I was like, no, don't think about it. Don't overthink it. Just write everything that comes to your mind. And then we just sort of talked it through, the two of us back and forth. And that's really where we started in terms of the story really coming together as a book.
That was probably one of the coolest parts, because just to be able to sit there and both write our own thing and then come together and see like the similarities that we had, and oh, you added this, I forgot you had this, or different stories that we had remembered or didn't remember, and then just like putting it all together. It was really cool to be able to have someone else to do it with. It's hard to start on your own and write on your own, and it can be troublesome. You're in your own head, but when you have someone else to collaborate with, it makes it a little bit easier, right? And especially when it's your sister.
But I am curious, do you have other stories that you plan to tell?
I mean, I think there are plenty of stories that we could tell. We did our best to put it in a way that younger children could understand. But the stories we have probably are endless. We could go from all the way up to our lives right now. We have stories from high school that we remember. This is my same story I use all the time, but filling out, and when we did the SATs, like, what are you? You could only choose one. I never wanted to choose one, so I always chose other. There's stories like that we have. So there's so many things that we could, discuss. But I think we both like the idea of Katie and Tessa as the characters, right? So maybe kind of focusing in still on that children's book side and looking at different things we experience from their lens, like more Katie and Tessa books and what they do, like going out with their mom or going out with their dad or going as a family, like different experiences that they have still at, the children's level.
And then the other thing that we've talked about is where Megan kind of like rolls her eyes is I'll call her randomly like on the weekend and I'm like, you know what else I thought of? We could write a book about, and like I just keep throwing these ideas out and she's like, don't you have something else to be doing? Don't you have like a little toddler running around? And these ideas just pop in my head. And what Megan's talking about, like the great thing about working with somebody, particularly your sister, is just having that level of comfort where I can just call you anytime, really, and just say like, oh, I had this idea, oh, I had that idea. That's when you can find a really good person to work with and be collaborative and have a teammate. It's really awesome because you can just get so much more done and really have someone to talk through ideas with.
And so one of the things that we would love for you to talk a little bit about to our students is, why is it important to tell our stories?
Telling your story allows, I think for yourself, allows you to feel like you can be confident or build confidence in who you are. Because as you get older and you repeat your story and tell your story, you also find a way to refine your story. How I might describe my childhood now looks a little different than the words I would have used or the way I would have said things 10 years ago. But you learn a way to communicate your story in a way that reaches other people and allows other people to gain perspective and want to learn more about you, because I can think of times when I was younger and it was just sometimes pure frustration, like being asked 100 times, like, what are you? Like, what are you? What kind of question is that? I'm a human being, right? But if I can find a way to tell my story and be prepared with how I want people to view me and how I can communicate and what I think of myself, then maybe I can help other people gain more perspective and be more open-minded and think about how we approach other people that we're not familiar with. I think that's one piece of it. I don't know, Megan, if you have more to add about, telling your story.
I think, it's your story. Who else is going to tell it better than you? That you have a voice for a reason. You know your story. Tell it, whatever it is, because whether it connects with one person or 500 people, you have a voice for a reason, and no one can tell your story better than you can.
Did either of you or both of you write when you were in middle school? And talking to our middle schoolers and talking about sharing their own stories, is there advice that you would give for students who are interested in using writing as a vehicle to tell their story?
I think with myself, I didn't particularly write stories. I wrote in a diary, of course. You have a diary you write in, or your journal, and you write about, what happened in your day or your friends. And I think that's a great start to it, right? Because you're just practicing that skill of writing, which is amazing. But I think kind of what Caitlyn had said before, just write anything, right? Put your thoughts down on paper, because maybe right now you don't know what else you want to say, but you could come back to it and be like, oh, that was a great idea. Now I have more experiences. I could add to that, right? So just writing, getting thoughts down on paper, I think is a really great way to get started.
I just personally want to thank you for taking time to be with us, and I'm excited to have your book now and know who you are.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming to talk to us about stories and the importance of stories and sharing our stories. We really appreciate it.